Hey everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. Today we're going to be looking at sharing our faith with our friends. Now, that's not really the easiest thing to talk about at the moment, with the restrictions obviously being what they are. That's not really all that easy, but it's not impossible at the moment either. I remember when I became a Christian and what led me to make that decision for myself. It was through Youth for Christ. I was going to the local youth cafe and I got involved in being a junior leader with them. And I spent time helping at other youth cafes, going to my local one, as well as going to a local church's youth group. And I went there pretty much every week. And over the time of going to this youth group and hearing about God and God's love for me and how much He's forgiven me for living my life for myself in the way that I wanted and not what He had in store for me. It was on a residential that actually I finally decided to let God into my life and finally said I was going to become a Christian. And that was because of the examples that people had set for me, the ways that my friends lived their lives and sharing the gospel with me, answering my questions. All of those things helped me come to see who God was. Let's read from a passage from the Bible together. If you've got a Bible, then great. If not, don't worry too much. This is from 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 15, and I'm going to use the Message translation for this today. Through thick and thin, keep your hearts at attention, in adoration before Christ, your Master. Be ready to speak up and tell anyone who asks why you are living the way you are. That's 1 Peter chapter 3 verse 15. I don't know what comes to mind for you when you read this passage. Maybe it's inspiration. You feel excited and inspired and a desire to share what you believe with your friends. A desire to share that faith with them. Or maybe you feel so overwhelmed by what God's done in your life that you just have to tell somebody. A bit like when you get some exciting news, you just want to tell somebody. You can't keep it to yourself. It's just a thing. It just has to come out. Maybe you feel excited and want to share your faith like that. Or maybe does hearing this actually fills you with dread? The knowledge that God wants us to share our faith with our friends and that He wants you and me to do that fills you with fear about not being able to give a good, clear, coherent answer to anyone that maybe makes sense, or the fear that maybe you're going to be interrogated by some extreme atheist asking you the hardest questions about your faith that you can think of. Maybe that's what you think of when you read this passage, and you are the one who has to answer those questions, and that can make us feel really scared. It can be really easy, therefore, to put off sharing our faith because of this fear and a belief that maybe our answer just won't be good enough. Maybe someone else's answer would be better than mine. Somebody else can share with that person. But how about, imagine this, if I told you that God doesn't need you to be the best evangelist. He doesn't need you to be the most gifted with words, the most talented at answering people's tough questions. Instead, actually, all God wants from you is to just give it a go and to give it your best. In our book, The 16 and a Half Ways to Upgrade Your Faith, he mentioned these two key things for us to remember when sharing our faith with our friends. The first one is that God is mysterious, and not everything can or even has to be explained for it to be true. It can still be the truth without it being explained. The second thing, and this is the really important one, is that God is the one who works in people's hearts, not you. Not me, not anyone else, God. When we realise these two things, it can settle our minds with the knowledge that we don't have to be perfect or have all the answers. Actually, if you're faced with a question that you don't know the answer to, then it's okay just to say, I don't know. I really don't know that. But you know what? I can try and find out. I can maybe ask someone, or maybe you can pray to God that that person's heart will be open to hearing what God wants to say to them, even though you can't give them an answer. Remember, it's God that changes people's hearts, not you or me. Our experiences can also tell a big story to people about sharing our faith. Don't underestimate how powerful your testimony can actually be. See, when you share about what God has done in your life and through your life, that can have a big effect on people, probably as much as giving an answer to their question. When we share our stories of things that have happened to us, it's really powerful. You might not be able to give a detailed answer to somebody's tough question, but you might be able to share your experiences of being a Christian with that person. You might be able to share the experiences you've had with God. And that, I don't know if you would agree, but I think that can be as powerful, if not maybe more powerful, than just answering their question. When it comes to sharing our faith with our friends, it's really, really important to not overcomplicate it and make ourselves feel really fearful and scared or nervous or worried about doing it. But actually, maybe we can just try and remember these few key simple things to help us out. Remember, you're simply sharing the difference that God has made in and through your life. You're sharing the good news of Jesus and God's love for that person. You are not responsible for somebody's salvation. That is God's responsibility. You are simply telling your story, and you're telling God's story of how much He loves them. And finally, this one's really important. Don't fake it. If you don't know an answer to a question, that's okay. You don't have to come up with an answer. You can just say, I don't know, but I can ask somebody, or maybe you can put them in the right direction of somebody else to go and speak to. The thing to think about is that the more we practice this, the more we do this, the more it becomes comfortable. The more we share our faith with our friends, the more comfortable and easy it may seem. God doesn't need you to be perfect at doing this. He just wants you to give it a go. And don't forget as well, sometimes, yes, it's important to answer people's questions, but the way that you live will also tell a big story. You might live in a slightly different way to somebody else, or maybe you don't speak in the same way as somebody all the time, using the same language, negatively maybe, that they do. I remember a story of when I became a Christian, not long after chatting to my parents, and they said to me, "You seem really different recently. You seem more calm, less stressed. You just seem a little bit different." It was hard for them to put into words, but they just saw something in me that was different to how I used to be before I became a Christian. I'd never had big conversations with my parents about my faith or shared big key things with them. I simply just lived the way that I thought God wanted me to live, and that in itself spoke volumes to them, the way that my life had changed through becoming a Christian and how I lived that out differently. It was St. Francis of Assisi who says this: "Preach the gospel in all circumstances, and when necessary, use words." Our actions are really as important as our words. I wonder, how can you share your faith with your friends this week?